sections that we go through. We'll discuss planting, pruning, fertilizing, weeding, watering, all the essential steps that we're involved in taking care of a garden, and how we deal with them very practically on Shmitta.
These are following the whole rows of Torah.
Correct. The sources for most of these, this is great, blended reading, you already have it and have looked at it, and we're going through the Anchayot according to Machonat Rabbah.
I'm making a new addition to this year.
Look forward to seeing this set. Just by way of introduction, when we're gardening all over the world, that's a fantastic thing. We're involved in nature and plants and trees and the Bria to an extent. But when we do those exact same actions in Eretz Israel, it takes on a complete different meaning. There's an aspect of Kedusha which is associated to all those actions that we do in gardening. And that Kedusha stems from the Kedusha of Eretz Israel as well. If you allow me, I saw a lovely Dvar Torah last few weeks of Parashot that we've been reading. And it says that the order goes, Vezachati et Briti Yaakov, Vezachati et Briti Yitzchak, Vezachati et Briti Avraham, Ve'aretz Yisrael. There are not too many places where the order is reversed. We normally go Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, but not Yaakov, Yitzchak, Avraham. So they explain that we have the merit of our forefathers that we can rely on. We can rely always on Yaakov. If that fails us, we can rely on Yitzchak. If that fails us, we can rely on Avraham. If that fails us, Ve'aretz Yisrael. The land of Israel has something very special to it that stands in our merit always. And where do we see this? When Yaakov leaves Eretz Israel and he's on his way to Haran, then he has a dream and he wakes up and he realizes there's something very special about this place. And what does he say? He says, if I come back and everything's okay and I make it back to Israel, Vaya Hashem li Elokim, then God will be my God. So again, Hashem take him to task on it. They say, God is Yaakov negotiating with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and if he looks after him and he returns him to Eretz Israel, then it will be alright for him, and if he doesn't, then it won't be his God. He says, no. He says, Yaakov realizes that there's a special relationship to be had with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's only to be had in Eretz Israel. And where's the proof of this? When Yaakov is on his way back to Eretz Israel, he's fearful of Esav. This is Yaakov HaTzadik, who's fearful of Esav HaRasha. It doesn't make sense. Why would he fear? He knows who he is. He knows he's lived with Lavan. He knows that he's managed to stand up to difficult challenges and prevail. And yet, Esav, he knows who he is as well. Esav is the Rasha. So what's the one ma'ala that Esav has that Yaakov is afraid of? Esav all this time has been in Eretz Israel. Yaakov has not been in Eretz Israel. Yaakov's been outside of Eretz Israel. His concern is that the ma'ala of being in Eretz Israel will be enough, perhaps, to conquer Yaakov, and that's his fear. So we have the zchut, the merit of being involved in Eretz Israel. When we're gardening in Eretz Israel, it's not just the gardening, but we're oskim b'kedusha, so to speak. And the Shana Shvi'it, the Shmitta, is like the Shabbat. We're busy for 6 years, and that 7th year is a time for introspection. And we connect through the land, through Eretz Israel. It's a trilogy of Am Israel, in Eretz Israel, with the Torah of Eretz Israel, and the Shvi'it is the focus on it. So I'm often asked questions about Shmitta. So I say, well, there are two approaches. You can be the Mekilim side or the Mahmirim. I am very Mahmir on this particular topic, and perhaps it would be easy to be Mekil. Being Mekil means just let everything die. Right? If you want to be Mahmir, then you have to take care of it and let it live. The key thing to the shiur and the halachot of Shmitta are going to be in one sentence is for things to survive, not to thrive. And that's what we're going to be doing in Shmitta. So we want whatever we've made effort and planted and put into the ground, there's no need to let that get destroyed in any way. At the same time, we don't need to do actions that will make the plants thrive. There's there's one other point in the Sefer, it's brought down as a nice example, that people have a Vaad Bait. And in the Vaad Bait, they have to decide whether to look after the gardens or not. So it leads to a big machloket. Some people say, well, we don't want to be looking after the gardens. Other people say, we do want to be looking after the gardens. But the point that, I think it's Rabbi Ariel brings down, he says the point is not to have the machloket. The whole point of the Shmitta is the exact opposite of getting into argument. Pay the Vaad Bait. If you're worried it's going to go to looking after the plants, never mind. You know, someone will take care of that. But you still have that responsibility of the lights, of the cleaning, whatever those other issues are. Not to use the Shmitta to land up making machlokot and to cause separation. So, at this stage, let's start getting into the actual halachot and different sections of the Shmitta. So, there are different times for planting. In general, anything that we plant will need 2 weeks before we can say it's fully taken, that it's taken its own roots. This is important to understand because there are timing differences. Just before Rosh Hashanah, that we'll need to have our plants in the ground already, and depending on what the plants are. So if we're planting a fruit tree that is a chasuf shoresh, it has no earth around the roots, it's going to take at least 2 weeks for those roots to become self-sufficient. And then it's going to take another 30 days for that plant to become connected to the ground. Now, the 30 days, we're going to need those 30 days for the orla. We're going to want to count before Shmitta a full 30 days, then we can get that whole year in as orla. So, again, to summarize, if we're planting, we need 2 weeks for something to root and 30 days to get it in as orla. Otherwise, we can't count this year as the first year. If we don't plant 30 days, that's 2 ba'av we'll have to plant by. We'll only get our first year in will be the Shmitta year itself.
Which you're not allowed to do.
You can, it'll just be a later year. You won't be able to count.
Now there's a zero that people will think, oh, so you planted it on, if now is that now being the 4th year that you're doing the Kedusha of the 4th
No,
year?
you're not at that stage. This is year 1. As you plant, that's your first year.
Right. I'm not saying that, not that you're going to lose the year. You're not allowed to have the first year be the Shemitah year because you did it too close to Shemitah, because there's a zera that people will think that you planted it on Shemitah.
I don't know.
I'm just saying
Okay.
a little different.
Okay. So that's as far as trees go. If we take regular trees that aren't fruit trees, then again we've got to give that 2 week period for the roots to take. The next thing is if we plant trees that are in a pot. And then the whole discussion is, we'll also get into it with Shmitta, what constitutes a pot, but there has to be enough earth around the roots and of the tree that can sustain it, and for 2 weeks. And if there's enough earth, and when we plant, be careful that the ball doesn't disintegrate, otherwise you're in trouble and you need the 6 weeks. But if it stays together in one ball and there's enough earth around it to sustain the tree, then you plant 2 weeks before and you can plant anything before. That's for trees and bushes. The next category is little annuals, flowers. Those are the little flowers that you plant. You need for that 4 days before Rosh Hashanah, and then they'll take. What they do stipulate is that you shouldn't have to water in order to root whatever it is that you're planting. You shouldn't have to water in excess to root it. When you first plant any plant, right? So then the root system is not yet developed enough to go and search for the water. It's very much as you planted it on that day, that's where the roots are. So you have to really bring the water to the roots and give enough water so that the plant can get that water and bring it. As the plant grows, it will be able to get water from further afield, a little bit outside of its exact area. So that's called, in Hebrew they refer to it as hashkayat hanbata, which is watering to get the plant to take. So in order to do that, you'd have to give excess water. That's something that we can't do post Rosh Hashanah. So you could plant up until Rosh Hashanah, whether it be trees, bushes, fruit trees, with earth, without earth, or little flowers. But following Rosh Hashanah, you can't be planting more. You can't be watering more. What we will be seeing is how we deal with the water for different classes of plants. Okay. As far as lawn goes, now there's two ways to plant a lawn. Today the most common, what you call side, the most common way to plant lawn is it comes in strips that are 1/2 meter by 1 meter and you lay them down. It takes about 6 weeks for this whole story to knit together. And that should be enough time. If you're planting that way, then that's how you would do it just before Shmitta. But if you did it the old-fashioned way and you took little lawn cuttings and dug them up and planted, so it would take a long time until all these little pieces of lawn came together. So you need to do that already in the spring. And the more you cut the lawn, which again we'll touch on later, and the more you water and fertilize, so too this lawn will come together. And the objective here is to have your lawn already complete by the time you get to Shmitta. Because if you haven't got a lawn that's fully knitted and close together, actions that you'll be doing in Shmitta will enhance the growth of the lawn. And that's exactly what we don't want to do. Not for the lawn, not for any. So cutting enhances the growth. And soon, we will do some cutting, right? And see what actions bring about growth, stimulate growth, or just hamper growth. So here we go. Pruning. As a rule, one should not prune on Shmitta at all. However, having said that, there are certain times that we can prune. Just before we get there, the more we prepare now in the Shana Shishit, the less and better equipped we'll be to handle our Shmitta. So if we do things this year, we'll be in a position in our gardens that we won't need to do and address a lot of the problems that we're going to encounter in the Shmitta. So the idea is to prep now and then ride through the Shmitta relatively easily. Okay. There are different categories of trees. The first trees are the nishirim, the deciduous trees, those that lose their leaves. The best time to prune those trees would be just towards the end of the winter. So they'll have lost all their leaves. You'll be able to see the skeleton of the trees, and we prune those trees now. That's gonna be the end of the winter, and then there'll be little touch-ups just before Rosh Hashanah around the fall that we'll do for those trees. We also get trees that are half nashir mutneh. They're half deciduous. Depends on how cold it's going to get. They'll either lose their leaves or not lose their leaves. And those trees we can prune throughout the summer and again towards the fall. And the third category is evergreens, like ficuses or conifers that are green the whole year round. And we'll prune those trees just before Shmitta. Again, the key thing here being do the pruning before you get to Shmitta. Once we've done that, we won't have a problem in Shmitta if we've pruned beforehand, because we can't prune properly in Shmitta. That's going to stimulate and enhance growth, so we want to get that done before the Shmitta. As far as cutting and pruning bushes go, so again, sometimes, this is very halacha l'maaseh, you see it often, one may have a hedge or a privet, what you call it, in your garden, and you want to keep it at a certain height. Now, if it's already fully developed, and it's reached the height that you want it to be at, like in your garden, right? So on Shmitta, there won't be any problem of cutting it on that height, because the action we're doing is the exact same action that we'd be doing if we wanted to stimulate the growth. But we have a height, it's reached that height, and that's where we want to keep it. So what we do, we are permitted to sustain a plant at a specific height, provided it's already reached that height, we can keep it like that. That's for a hedge. If we had a hedge, sometimes you see never one plant doesn't much take off. It happens, right? You can have a whole row of them and one is just small. So all the others you could cut and it wouldn't be a problem. But this one you couldn't cut it because that action, he hasn't reached the height and he's down here. The action of cutting is going to stimulate the growth for that plant, so that would not be permissible in such a case. Sometimes you get like a topiary, which is a round ball, down at the bottom in the shul over here. So those you can, because the interest is not to grow this thing into something bigger, it's to maintain the existing shape. But you can only maintain an existing shape provided it's already reached that existing shape fully. And again, you know, the gardener knows, the person doing the work, has to be honest with himself what his intentions and kavanot are. But the guiding line here is you can prune an existing shape, but it has to have really reached fully that existing shape. Another and the stage that the plant is in that you're doing the action on. Another time where we're going to be pruning is when it comes to schach. We're going to be cutting the schach. So what's good for the tree is to cut as close as possible to the tree. When we cut away from the tree, so that's not so good for the tree. You'll see this year if we cut palm branches or eucalyptus branches, whatever people use for schach, the technique that's used will determine your intention. And this year we're not looking for what's best for the tree, we just want the schach. So Lamaisa, you're going to cut 30, 40 centimeters away from the branch of the tree. Especially with schach, with palm branches, you cut right up against it and do away with all those thorns. This year we're going to leave all the thorns around, and after Shmitta we'll come back and clean it up. So that's as far as schach goes. Obviously, if something is in the way, if it's a pathway that people would walk through, or if there are power lines up above, anything that causes nezek or is problematic, so there's no, my understanding, there's no extra mitzvah or you're keeping Shmitta better because you haven't cut it. The hefech perhaps. If there's power lines and it constitutes a potential danger, cut the tree, right? Don't wait for it to fall on the power lines because you're keeping Shmitta. You're keeping Shmitta, but you're doing damage somewhere else. So, what's the thing about common sense? It's not so common, right? But if you use a lot of that, then we can make good decisions as far as the Shmitta goes. There's often I find in Yahudut, there's like the concept, if it doesn't hurt, then we're not doing it properly, right? So it doesn't have to hurt. There's no bonus points here for walking into your palm tree for the whole year because you didn't want to cut one branch. If it's in the way, it's disturbing. I don't know if I'm wrong, correct me, right? This is my own personal take on it. But cut the branch and walk past, right? If you need to tie it up, so do so. But again, try to do all these things before the Shmitta comes. So that's pretty much as far as pruning goes. There's one more category, which is a murkav. Murkav is if we graft one type of a tree onto another. Obviously something that's permissible, which is a min b'mino. So for example, they'll have like a chushchash on a citrus. And they'll take the chushchash because it has strong roots and a different orange and put it onto those roots. That grafting is halachically a permissible grafting, it's not a kilayim. But what does happen sometimes, the chushchash is very strong and it will send out branches from below the graft. It will send out branches from below the graft. If you see that the kaneh, the part of the rootstock, is overpowering the rochev, what you grafted on, then it would be permissible to cut those branches that are coming down. What I did see is that how do you define what is damage? For a tree, what constitutes damage? So the answer is if it can recover in a year or 2 years from the setback that it suffered, then that's not damage. But if it's going to have permanent consequences to not taking care of it, then you can take care of it. So that's helpful to know what to do when you can cut something. Chushchash is a type of a citrus. There's different varieties. It's a type of a citrus. It's like a bit more like a lemon. It hasn't got tasty fruit or anything like that. But it's got a very, very strong root system. So you use that root system and then they put oranges onto it or anything else, clementine onto it, just to have the benefits of that root.
So you're allowed to graft another citrus tree on a...
Yes, because it's the same species. You couldn't graft an apple tree onto a citrus tree. That's already kilayim.
An ugly fruit. Okay, you familiar with ugly fruit?
No.
So citrus, it looks like it's rogan, it's not a rogan. And I remember when I lived in Florida, it was grafted onto grapefruit tree because but that would be considered
No, that's fine. They're all part of the same family. All the citrus is one family. But you couldn't take something completely different, like, I mean, it wouldn't work, a banana tree, a banana. You couldn't take a banana tree and put that onto a citrus tree. All the citrus stays together. The peaches, the nectarines, the plums. As long as they're in their own families, it's not mixing it.
Tilt the microphone a little bit to this side.
Yeah? Okay. So that's the pruning side of things. Now as far as fertilizing goes, so on Shmitta itself we're not going to fertilize at all, because fertilizer is there to help the plants, to stimulate the growth and to get the garden looking better, and the fruit, everything is enhanced through fertilizer. So on Shmitta we won't do any fertilizer. Having said that, we fertilize before Shmitta, and today there are fertilizers that are slow release fertilizers. You can get for 3 to 4 months, for 6 to 8 months. So before Shmitta, we're going to fertilize with these in the fall, just before Rosh Hashanah, and that's going to see us through for 6 months in Shmitta. We'll also put down compost around the trees, and that takes longer to break down and for the plants to absorb. So pretty simple with the fertilizer. Again, if you're fertilizing in sandy soil or heavy clay soil, that'll be different. But we're not going to get into the actual nitty-gritty of it here tonight. You can email me or call me, I'm happy to help. But conceptually, fertilize before Shmitta, use slow release fertilizers, and that will see us through at least 6 months into the Shmitta, and then we'll fertilize when we come out of the Shmitta.
We learned that it's okay because you're actually, the field is getting fertilized on Shmitta, it's just you're not doing an action.
Yes. I saw also to fertilize in the water rather than to sprinkle it by hand. I saw that was better if you had to fertilize and you had a problem where you needed to give fertilizer. So rather to fertilize
Directly.
No, indirectly.
Rather than fertilizing directly,
Putting it into the water. And as touching on it now, watering the same is for watering. Better to water, because you want to be watering less. We'll go into it when we get to the watering section. But also better to water with a computer than to water by hand directly. So that's as far as fertilizers. Now, the next thing we're going to be bothered by, and that's the weeds. There are always going to be weeds in the garden. The good book says 1 year's weeds is 7 years seeds. Right? So you want to try and get rid of the weeds. If we can stay on top of the garden all the time, then we'll reduce the weeds. We'll never eliminate them completely. But there are actions we can take, again, before Shmitta to have less weeds, because it's very problematic getting rid of weeds in the Shmitta. What do I mean by that? We can firstly do all the actions. We can spray before Shmitta, we can weed whack, we can pull it out, we can use the hoe, we can do whatever is at our disposal to get rid of the weeds. Once we get into Shmitta, we can't. And there's an order that we follow in order, because what is the actual problem with weeding? The problem with weeding is when you weed, like it or not, you're turning the ground and you're working the ground. And that's the exact action that we don't want to be doing on the Shmitta. So the order of how to weed is as follows. The first thing you do is to spray. Spraying is a relatively, what's the word, non-obtrusive action. You come from above, you don't touch the plants, and you spray. And there are different sprays that will kill weeds in grass and not kill the grass. There are sprays that know whether it's a broad leaf, thick round leaf, or a good thin leaf like a grass leaf. And depending on what your problem is, you can choose one of those sprays to get rid of the weed. So that's your first option, is to spray. The next option would be to take like a weed whacker or something, and you cut the weeds above the ground. So you're still leaving it all intact on the ground and not coming into contact with the ground. Your next section would be to actually cut it. Physically take the scissors, the pruning shears, and you cut the bottom of the weed. And then you could also take a weeding tool like a knife and stick it into the ground to cut it and then pull it out. And the last case you do, if these didn't work for you, is to actually take the weed physically by hand and pull it out of the ground. So first we'll try all the others. If we're not successful, then we'll pull it out. At which stage?
How are you ordering? What's easier? What's most effective? What's the order?
What's less contact with the ground?
This on Shmitta?
No, before you can do everything. On Shmitta. Before it doesn't matter.
What needs to happen in order to enable you to do that on Shmitta?
Well, that's exactly where we're at.
Great.
Right, so what needs to happen in order to enable us to do that on Shmitta, the plants need to be suffering. How would the plants be suffering? Or if irreversible damage would be done. So, one of those two. The plants are always in competition for sunlight and for water. If you've got a little plant and a big weed grows on top of it, and the way of the world is such that the weeds grow better than the plants and they grow on top of them, so if that little plant's going to die, you can take care of that weed, and you would take care of that weed in this order. You'd try and spray it out, you'd try and weed whack it, or you'd cut it, or you'd cut it in the ground, or you'd pull it out. But if you deem the fact that this plant's going to be destroyed, then you can take out the weed. And the other thing is, if your garden would become overrun, there are certain weeds that you don't want to have them in your garden. So the first would be like cider or kertol, it's called. If you've got that, you want to try and eradicate that and not let it go for a year, because you'll struggle to get rid of it afterwards. If you have types of kayetset, then every flower has, I don't know how they know this, but this is what the books say, has 500,000 seeds. So you don't need a high percentage germination to like lose your field or your garden according to these weeds. So those weeds you would try and get rid of. And again, you don't necessarily have to start pulling them out and digging them. You can just cut off the tops, and that will take care of the flower, which will become the seed. So you sorted it out in that way. So if the weeds cause a problem to the plants, or they're going to cause long-term problems, you can take them out in the way we mentioned. Another area, not related to the garden, but yes to weeds, is if you've got an area that could be a dangerous area. What do we mean by that? If there's long grass and weeds and things are hidden and children play and it's not safe, again, it's not so much a question. Really take care of that. If it's an area that's completely overgrown and rodents could live there, and as a result snakes will come to that area, again, there's not a problem to take care of it. There's no, like I said, it doesn't have to hurt, right? If you see it's potentially a problem and it's going to cause a bigger problem, then the Shmitta, on my interpretation at least, is such that it's flexible to clean out the weeds, clean out the debris, make sure they aren't rodents, and you don't want to have an area that's inviting for snakes to be if you've got children that live there because of Shmitta. That's a contradiction in the way I interpret it. So that's in terms of weed. Now, there's an area of fruit. Many of us have fruit trees in our garden, and especially the summer fruits, all the peaches, nectarines, they have a lot of flowers, and one of the actions we do is to reduce the amount of flowers. We want to do that so that we get a better quality fruit. Instead of having 4 little fruits on one branch, we rather have one big fruit than 4 little fruits. In order to do this, we do dilul, thinning out. So we can do that in different stages. The first stage is the flowers. You can just shake the tree or beat it with a stick and you reduce a lot of the flowers. It's a bit of a gamble because you don't know if you're destroying flowers that have been pollinated or not. Your assumption is they've all been pollinated and therefore you're eliminating. But you could be wrong, you've eliminated and you have no fruit at all. But it's a risk we have to take.
That on Shmitta to shake off the buds so that the sun don't fall off.
Yes, on Shmitta, right? You can beat the stick.
Wouldn't that be like a great paper? That's another kid? Rabbi Malinowitz?
Yes, it would be. Because you'd be asking, I'm not sure if you...
Avoid the payers in that situation. You're doing this action so that you'll get better fruit. Is that avoid the payers?
Yes.
They allow, what the control allows is to get the same quality fruit that they grow in
You're right.
That's what we pay.
That would be okay.
Where it does become a problem and you have the Kedushat Shvi'it is if you go already to the next stage where the flowers have germinated. Now you've got little fruits. Now normally what we do, if we try to thin out the tree by reducing the amount of flowers, and now we've got fruits, but we see we've still got too many fruits. You see like 4 pomelos all growing together. We just want one over there. So normally it would be a problem. We would just take off the fruits and that would be that. But now these fruits that we take off, they're baby fruits, they have Kedushat Shvi'it already. It's not so simple to just take them and throw them away or dispose of them. So you wouldn't just be able to do that. Having said that, what does happen, the tree becomes too heavy. And then you'll have a lot of fruit on the tree. And what can happen, I had one instance with a client. I said, look, we need to thin out the flowers. She said, no, chaval on the flowers, don't take off the flowers. So we didn't take off the flowers. So then we had like lots of fruit. I said, look, we've got really too much fruit. The tree can't sustain all this fruit. So she said, no, it's a chaval on the fruit, don't. The tree got heavier and heavier. Eventually the branch broke. And that was the real biggest chaval, right? Because in the end you lose the tree. And the halakha permits, in the case where you see that it's going to actually break the tree, then you could take off the fruit. Because again, the intention here is not to have the other fruits be bigger and better, but the intention is to save the tree, to prevent having damage that is irreparable. If you, for example, a plum or a pear tree, it takes 2 years when you've cut a branch, it will only be 2 years later that you will see fruit coming off from where you've pruned. So if a big branch breaks, that's a big loss. So we'll try again. The same guidelines keep coming up over and over again, where we want to prevent doing something that isn't recoverable within a reasonable period of time, that being a year to 2 years. To prevent different types of spray. There is a spray, we don't do that so much, but there are sprays that will prevent flowers from coming. If you
Stop.
yes, in the start,
There's fertilizer spray, there's sprays that kill bugs.
yes, but in Shmitta we won't be spraying so much.
Not even to kill bugs.
If it poses like a real problem for the tree, I don't like even non-Shmitta to use sprays unless you have to. But sometimes you do have to. But most times the trees will get over it themselves. If the garden is healthy, the bugs won't come. Nature's very specific. It will attack the weak and finish them. But if it's strong, then you won't have the issue. So it's like the human body, I guess. If you're fit and healthy and watch your diet, then your chance of getting sick is less. Same is with the garden. So prevention is what we're trying to get at. And if you have to and it's ill, then you can. So that's for thinning out fruit. We're now going to move on to the next section, which is lawn care. So the lawn is perhaps one of our strongest plants. It's the only plant that we can actually abuse and it still comes back to a certain extent. I'm not talking about the synthetic lawn now, this is the real lawn. So the action that what lawn needs is sunlight and water, not too much wear and tear walking on it, and a bit of fertilizer. The action that really helps the lawn is when you cut it. You keep cutting your lawn, so that's what makes it grow, because it gets thicker and it spreads out, and that's what helps the lawn. So in Shmitta, what we're going to do with our lawn is, we don't want it to get destroyed, so we're going to keep doing all these actions, but we're going to do them one step less than we normally do. That means just a little bit less. We don't have to suddenly, after we've worked on our lawn for 6 years, let it go to wreck and ruin. We just have to treat our lawn one step back from whatever it is that we were doing. What are these steps? As far as the water goes, we give 10 to 15% less water of what we've been giving usually. There are formulas for all these things. It works out 3 liters per meter per day, and you calculate that over a week, and you divide it into 2 to give 2 waterings. And then again, It will keep it, but not make it go thrive. It will keep it, but
Keep it and not thrive.
that's right. It will survive and not thrive. And that's how we're going to water. As far as the fertilizer goes, we're not going to fertilize the Shmitta. We fertilize before Shmitta. We'll get through the Shmitta, we'll fertilize again after Shmitta. The fertilizer is going to enhance and do a lot for it. We don't do that on Shmitta. As far as the cutting goes, we're going to cut higher. If we've set the lawnmower on level 3 or whichever the level is you've set it on, go one step higher. We're going to cut it a bit higher because that low cutting will cause it to thicken out and to spread out more. So by doing these actions, we're going to not do the maximum we can in order for our lawn to be as strong, as lush, as green as it can, but we don't need to destroy the lawn at the same time. So if you don't cut it, the lawn will get sick. It will get sick. Also the surface area will increase because it's longer, and then it will use more water. And you're giving less water, so you'll get into a cycle of it getting sick. Sometimes you see a long lawn, and all of a sudden you cut it, the bottom of the lawn is white, and that will get sunburned if it's in the sun. And then that will die, it will get destroyed. So you want to keep it at a level. You normally want to take off 2 to 3 centimeters of lawn at any cut. Sometimes with Kuya it's more because it grows that much in a few days. But you want to keep at it regularly, not let it get too low. Otherwise you can get into trouble. So that's lawn. We'll now move on to roses. Right? Roses are a difficult plant because they need a lot of care. My lecturer at the Hebrew said the rose is either the most prettiest or the ugliest plant in the garden. Depends on how much care it gets. So the first thing about roses is they like a lot of water. And if you don't give them the water, then they're going to suffer. And they won't recover once they've suffered. So again, whatever you're watering your rose, continue to give it water a little bit less, but there's no point in bringing the rose into making it suffer and to drying out the rose. A rose, by the way, can live for 500 years. In France, there are roses that are 500-600 years old. So it's a very, very strong plant, but it certainly needs care. The thing about the rose is the more you cut it, the more flowers you'll get. So you can't do that. At the same time, you have a rose, you can cut it and take benefit from that flower. So where do we draw the line and how do we decide at which point we're cutting? So we'll look soon, there's some roses there, how we cut, and then we'll see what cuttings make the rose grow. We can decide whether we want a long stem or a short stem, whether we want it to grow in a certain direction, and that's all by exactly where we'll cut the rose along the stem. So we'll look at the roses soon. There's another time when we can prune, and this is I didn't mention for anything, especially the roses. If a branch is sick or has a bud or something, we don't have to wait for that to spread to the whole tree. We can just cut the sick branch and dispose of that, and that's not a problem on Shmitta. The same as if you're pruning and you put ointment on, you seal the wounds with the ointment. We're not doing that in order to enhance. We do those actions to protect. So anything that we're doing to protect what's already there is permissible on the Shmitta. What you would not be allowed to do on Shmitta is to deadhead. What you do to increase flowering any plant, especially roses, you cut off all the dead heads, and by cutting them off, then new flowers will get. Because the plant knows it needs to make seeds. You take away the seeds, it realizes, oh, there's no seeds, there's no dor hemshech. So it makes more flowers to get to seeds. If you keep taking off the flowers and there are no seeds, the plant keeps making more flowers. So that's as far as roses go. One other point, on Shmitta, the fruit is hefty. That means that anybody, you always put a sign up, right, outside your house, that people can come and help themselves and take it. Two things. If something is not yet Orla, it's not past its 4, it hasn't been put in the 4th year and it hasn't passed its 3 years, so it's suggested to put a sign up on the tree that people should know that don't help yourself from this tree, from this fruit yet, it's still order. That's one side. And the other thing is you invite people to come into your house and take fruit. So this halacha everybody knows, that it's hefka and they can take. What they're not so familiar with, it seems pretty obvious, don't destroy the tree, right? When you come into someone else's house and you invite you're allowed to take the fruit that you want to take. So you can tell them, firstly they have to ask for permission. It's not a free-for-all. And secondly, they have to be makpid not to destroy the tree when they take. And what I saw recently is that they can't take, like for them, the family, the grandchildren, the cousins and everybody. You should take as much as you need for yourself, but not to clean out a tree simply because it's hefty.
What's considered as much as you need for yourself? Today,
how many can you eat, Dr. Steinberg?
I heard it's 2 or 3 days. Just enough for 2 or 3 days.
Not like you're going to store it. It's not like it's on sale and now you've, okay, we're taking 4 kilos, right? A few, what do you need? Yes. He's not going to say no. I think it's a sensitivity. It's a person's tree, it's his property, it's his house. He's not going to say no to you, but behold from it. You wouldn't just come into the garden and help yourself take a few and go. Yes. No, the fruit is hefka, but it's his fruit. Okay, so instead of going, thank you.
No shear next week, I'll say. Hanukkah, no shear.
There are fields down at the bottom. I remember last Shmitta we went down to the bottom fields here by Machasia.
Shapiro has
They sold land and stuff like that. I guess you have to find out. Give us some time, you'll see. The last thing is...
Put up a sign when people are allowed to come in there.
Yes?
Yes.
Still your property. The fruit is hefka, it's still your property. Okay, the last thing we'll touch on and then we'll look at some cutting is the watering. So, to be successful in the garden, you need to water correctly. Too much water will have an adverse effect, not enough water will also. So you want to water enough. So whatever you're doing during the year, if you bring it down 10-15% less, will get you through the Shmitta just fine. And like I said, it's better to water with an automated watering system. The computer is actually doing the action, same as with the fertilizer, rather than to open. During Shmitta.
Does it have to be separate for Shmitta?
No, I don't think so. Once it's set, it's set. Just lower the quantity all the time, however it works. Just so that's it. That would be that. Even non-Shmitta, the computers pay for themselves plus more. Because the plants don't die. Because you either, it's like feast or famine if you're doing it by hand. You'll like forget, and then you'll walk past it 10 times. You say, I've got to do it today. And eventually you'll open the water. You go to bed and you wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning, you go, oh my God, I left on the water, right? You rush to close it. So the computer will eliminate it. Set it, and it saves a lot of water, the plants don't die, it's mamash kedai. And in Shmitta, luckily it's better to water that way. So that those are the topics that goes through in more detail. Both these books have laid it out in more detail. And there are also tables. How much you need to fertilize, what type of soil you have, all of that you can look it up and see. And then we'll just take a minute now towards the end to see how we prune and what the actions are. So let's say like this. If this was our road, so normally it depends what kind of a road, but we'd want another flower to cut. So we'd cut down here just above the leaf, and then we'd get another short flower. If we wanted to get a long stem, we'd go here where there are already 5 leaves. If we cut over here, then we get a long stem that would come up. And the direction, just for common knowledge, if we wanted the next stem to come out facing this way, then we'd cut where this leaf is. If we wanted it to be this way, over here, we'd cut where that leaf is. So we can decide by where we cut whether we're going to get a short stem and then a flower, and what the direction is that this next branch is going to come to. So that's it. What we shouldn't do is just cut it in the middle. If you do like that, because what happens is this will get dry, and then the bugs will come in here, and your rose could potentially get sick. So you wouldn't ever want to do that. You want to cut like right up against the leaf. That's a good cut, right up against the edge, and then that will seal itself, and your new branch will come out from there and give you your flower. As far as the trees go, so again, if we wanted to shape the tree, let's say this is a young tree and we wanted to shape it before, so we'd want a central branch. So we'd get rid of all these side branches. Now normally, or let's say what we'll do on Shmitta, if this is in the way or it's disturbing or something, we'll just cut it over here, leaving that. Because our intention is to just eliminate the problem. But if we wanted to do what was really good for the tree, we'd always want to cut right up close. You get your shears as close as possible, find your best angle, right up against the branch, and then you cut to get a nice neat cut right up against. What's going to happen here, the tree will close around this, and this will disappear, and then you'll have one trunk. Whereas if we just cut like this, which is the Shmitta cut, what's going to happen is all these eyelets are going to wake up, and from here there'll be branches. You get 5 or 6 new ones. So on Shmitta, that isn't beneficial to the tree. That's just to take care of something that's in your way or poking us or disturbing. We're going to cut like this. If this was a palm tree, the schach also will cut it at the end. When we're cutting correctly during the year, then we want to get as close as possible to the trunk and then to cut. And that gives us a good cut. And then again, when you're cutting, you can choose the direction. Let's say this tree is growing like this and it's going over there. We don't want that. We want it rather to go up. Right, this is the branch. I'll hold it from here. So then we'll cut down here, and now we can change the direction. So normally I see people have just come and they've pruned the tree, and it looks like a broom, you know? It looks like that, right? So you don't want to do that so much. You want to choose the main branches and extend the main branches and shape the tree. So if this was a young tree, this is the type of thing we do before Shmitta, because you couldn't do this in Shmitta. But we try and shape it into some kind of a tree. So we take off this branch over here, and this is growing down. We want it to grow up, so we bring it from here. And here also we take down slowly, you give it a shape and expose the main branches.
I finally got it. Thank you.
You finally got it. That's it. So,
What about taking the loving off? Taking the loving off a date palm tree. Any particular problem with that?
I'm not sure. I'm not lucky in the area. I guess it's okay because we do have the loving, right? So
Yeah.
If they come from El Arish or from here, where they are, if there's a difference, maybe they just cut it differently. Any cutting that is done on Shmitta should be done with a shinui. I didn't mention. So any cutting that's done, if you do have to do it slightly differently than how you normally do it. If you can. Sometimes.
Take a knife.
Just cutting could be, and that is your shinui, right? So that is there. I saw something nice that the Ramban says, and this will close up. So he says we can learn Zimaon from trees, thirst from trees. So that trees can really go for a long time without water. And you see them thirsty, but they don't despair. He says if you look at a plantation of trees, he says it looks like people davening. He says their arms are always reached up, even if they've lost all their leaves. He says they don't despair. Their arms are always reached up and they're always looking positively for the Yeshua. And we can learn tefillah from trees. So says the Rambam. Okay, if there are questions, I'm glad to tell.
Which days trees become green, like they die, you get like a disease or something.
It depends on the tree. Often there can be beetles that will destroy a tree. Not enough water is the first thing you look for. So whatever it's causing, sometimes there's a fungus that will attack a tree.
Disease can be,
Yes. There's normally a cause for it. And then whatever that cause is, you you start off by first seeing is the water okay, and then you look for bugs and for funguses. And normally it lies in that area. You sort out from there. Sorry, we didn't say. Plants in the house have no din of Shmitta. There are four categories that need to There are four categories that need to apply for a pot plant in order for it not to have a din of Shmitta. Now we'll see if I can remember all four. Right? So the first, it needs to have a volume no greater than 330 liters. It's 2 se'ah. So that's quite a big area. That's a volume of 330 liters. If it's more than that, then it's too big. Right? The next thing is it needs to be inside the house. Mamash inside the house. House constitutes walls of 80 centimeters. That's a wall. And you can't move this thing in and out. The other thing, it needs to have no contact with the earth. And the roof, obviously. And the roof. It needs to have no contact with the earth. So either it's on a tile or on plastic or something like that. Yes, but a tile that's non-porous. Right? Like this kind of a tile. Sambalachet or porous. Like what's in the street, the pavement, that's no good. Because that's mechubar lakarka. The point here being that it shouldn't be mechubar lakarka.
Plastic is okay.
Plastic container is fine. PVC plastic, anything that it shouldn't be, and then you can treat it, you can plant into that, you can take it.
What was the question?
The fruit that it produces. Because it's still Kedushat Shvi'it, you couldn't take away from it. Again, you've got hydroponics is in water. It's not so much just the growing material. It's the size of the pot
That's
where it's
matzah
situated.
why would it have
around
condition?
if it's very big.
It's a
As long as it met the four criteria, it would be okay.
It's a matzah menutak. It's the same way that
As a pot, yes, but it would depend on the size. Some of the hydroponics are huge.
not in your house. No, I'm saying stuff in your house. If you have a kumquat or something.
You don't have a problem with boiling.
Just set it. All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But not
about using
So,
between that and putting on a Shabbos mark, just fertilize during the year.
I wouldn't want to do the action during Shmitta, because that action is going to bring about there's going to be a direct consequence of that action, which will be that things are going to thrive and do well. As soon as you put it on, or it's in the water, you're going to do that. So you want to refrain from fertilizing milachila in Shmitta. You're fertilizing when it's not yet Shmitta. The fact that it breaks down slowly is to the plant's advantage, but you're not doing a physical action of going out there and fertilizing here and now. You can fertilize if a plant is sick and needs it, and then preferably in the water. Through the water system, in liquid fertilizer, as opposed to pellets. Because it's like a grandma almost, it's like one step removed and it's coming through the water. It's more available to the plant and it's instant, but it's through the water, so to speak, not something that you've taken in. The whole thing is ibudei karka, that you're working the ground. So here you're not, you're doing it through the water.
We missed the fourth commission.
Also to be
Wasn't it?
is the size. The size.
Maybe the bottom and top is two.
Atzitz nakuf.
Isn't that the same as disconnected?
No, atzitz nakuf is mechubar lakarka.
Inside the house?
Yeah,
We said inside the house, we said the volume.
But if it's inside the house, no cook doesn't make a difference, right?
No, because you're inside the house, and nakuf is cancelled out.
Near a window, maybe?
But it doesn't make any difference to the hole, like Shabbos? It doesn't make any difference to the hole?
It does make a difference. Yeah, but that has to be disconnected.
You just said it has to sit on plastic. You didn't say that the pot itself has to be
So
closed.
it says like this. It says,
not as a whole, but it's the whole.
it says שבעציץ לא ינהגו דיני השביעית, עליו למלא את כל ארבעת התנאים דלעיל. אינו נקוף, so it's not מחובר, it doesn't have a hole, right? נמצא בבית, that it's inside the house under cover with roofs and it stays there continuously. אינו גדול מדי, the volume of the thing. And the last one is תפונותיו עשויים מחומר בלתי חדיר לשורשים. So that the roots, I would think this is to do with Mechubar already, but it seems to be a separate part.
So the clay pot wouldn't be acceptable?
Like a terracotta one, if it's permeable then not.
To roots.
How big the holes have to be?
2 centimeters.
What was the fourth one? Is it about the roots?
דפנותיו עשויים מחומר בלתי חדיר לשורשים. That the roots should be able to go through the material of the pot. I'm not sure what the difference between that would be and Eino Nakuf. If it was not permeable, that would be Eino Nakuf. So
You have a merpesit that doesn't have a roof on it, but they're in plastic containers.
it's outside.
It's outside.
In your window
The
sill.
definition of inside is a roof.
In your
So
window
therefore you can't do any, you can give less water then to the water.
But you need a wall around it, so it's tricky. Inside, no, maybe the burglar bars around or something. It's got to be enclosed. Bring it in that here.
It doesn't have a roof, it's no good anyway.
The window sill is.
On top, the window sill is the roof.
Is the roof.
Yeah, but I mean, passive.
No, the window sills are not. No. Unless it's mechanical.
So,
Yasher
thanks
Koach.
everybody.
Excellent
Thanks,
job. Thank
It's
you.
good.